Good morning, Vine Church. Can you stand with us? We're going to begin worship today. Nothing shall be impossible. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. song is new today. It's a new song called New Wine. We really like this song, especially in this time, because it's saying through the crushing, through the pressing, through the whole process where it feels like we're getting beat up, battered, where we don't know where to go, when we feel weighed down by everything going on around us, whether it's in the world or in our personal lives. This song is really just saying that God can use this to turn us into something new, to make us something better. He can still bring something sweet out of a bitter situation. So let's sing that again, thinking of being that new wine. God has created us, that through the crushing and pressing, that God can still make something good come out of all this. So let's sing that again.
Would you be seated? I want to remind you that if you came to give an offering today, they have the box in the back, and so you can do that if you're not already hooked up with us online and giving online. We're going to sing that through one more time. I just want you to kind of set your hearts on what we're about to discuss today in the Word, and so if you just run through that one more time.
Make me a vessel.
Get through.
I came here with nothing, but all you have given me, Jesus, bring new wine out of me.
That's good. All right, let's get started. If you will, take your Bibles, open them up to Matthew chapter 6. We're going to be tiptoeing around in Matthew chapter 6 today. As we get there, it's been a tough couple of months, it feels like. Doesn't it feel like that to you guys? Tough couple of months. No big deal. Nothing happened in our world, just chaos. Okay, so check this out. It all started with this, the coronavirus. There you go. Some of us are still a little worried. I think rightfully so, maybe. Got some spikes in some areas, but there it is. Coronavirus, that took over. That was big at one point. Trapped us in our homes. Got you doing homeschool with your kids. And if you were doing 8th grade math, that was rough. And some of you guys tried to figure that out. That was rough. I don't know if you know this. Maybe you missed it. There was an Ebola spike in the Congo. That even happened. That was a real thing. Ebola came back in the Congo. End of the world. All right. There were some murder hornets that took over. That was big in the news. And then there was actual murder, which wasn't a joke. Actual murder that took place, which led to protests all over the United States. Many that were peaceful and some that were not. And so that's what's been going on in our world. And it feels chaotic, and it feels like a lot. But that's what's happening. So, back to the Lord's Prayer. In Matthew chapter 6, Jesus tells us how to pray. And this prayer applies for when things are good, and applies for when things are bad. And I tend to go back again and again to this teaching of Jesus when it comes to chaotic times, and so I thought I'd bring that to you today. Are you a Lord's Prayer person? Do you know the Lord's Prayer? It's a test. You got it? You got that one down? If you're new, it's okay. If you're just getting started, it's okay. No big deal. Nobody's going to look down upon you, but this is a big one. This is Jesus' words about how we're supposed to approach life and what we're supposed to be desiring. And so this is it. This is the Lord's Prayer. For me, the Lord's Prayer, I learned the Lord's Prayer in a locker room because when you grow up, as I did playing a sport, you play basketball and you do it in the South, you say the Lord's Prayer before the games, partly because you want to have the Lord on your side to beat the other team. But that's how I learned the Lord's Prayer, was in the locker room, right? You get in the locker room. And I learned it from, I think my coach was Catholic, so I learned like the old school, like the these and the thous and the whole deal, like the King James version of the Lord's Prayer. That was me. Now, here's the funny thing. Now, I don't know if this is you. Maybe this is just me. I'm not saying that this is a good thing. I'm just telling you what my heart is. Now, I usually just pray. I'm not really praying the form of the Lord's Prayer, except for one place. I always do this. I notice that it's a habit for me. I go to it again and again. Are you ready? If I get on a flight, I say the Lord's Prayer. Like I'm thinking, hey, we're just going to take this big, giant metal tube into the sky, and I'm just going to throw one up, let the Lord know I've been thinking about him, and then I heard what he told me to do, and then I'm going to pray the Lord. And I do. Right as we're taking off, I'm like, this could be it. Lord, my mind's on you. I'm ready. I'm ready. Because they say takeoff and landing is the roughest. I'm ready. Here we go. That's me. Lord's Prayer. Let's do it. You guys ready? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us of our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen. It's pretty good. Pretty good. I want to look at one phrase from the Lord's Prayer that I believe should be the motto of the church. I believe this should be our motto, our bumper stickers, our like tattoos. This should be the one. This should be the one that like envelops our mission. Are you with me? Look at this phrase. On earth as it is in heaven. Jesus tells us that we should desire for things to be on earth as they are in heaven. And in order to like fully pray that and mean that and to wrap your brain around that, you're going to have to know what things are like in heaven. And in order to get that, we don't have a lot of information. I mean, none of you, I mean, maybe there's somebody that's been, but none of us, I'm thinking is believable, has been lately. And so we got to rely upon what God showed John and what he wrote in the book of Revelation about what it's going to be like. And granted, it's through a glass. It's dimly lit. It's not easy. It's like little bits and pieces. It's just a poorly reflection of a mirror, but it's what we got. And so if we're going to desire here what it's like there, let's look really quickly. Look at chapter 21. And I saw a holy city. That's the way John describes what's to come, a holy city. Meaning that all different people inhabited together, and there's a throne. God's presence is there. It says, the new Jerusalem coming down out of heaven, it was prepared like a bride dressed for a husband, and that sounds awesome. I don't know a lot of husbands that didn't think that was awesome, right? Or this, look at verse 27. Nothing unclean will ever enter this city. This city is void of uncleanness, which is better than most cities, you know? Went to Chicago a couple years ago with some friends. That was a great time. Literally, I look back on that trip. That was a cool little trip up to Chicago. It was such a cool city. Downtown, it was amazing. Like, it was an amazing experience. Downtown, those huge buildings. Never really been in a city like that. That was pretty awesome. And then I looked over at my wife. We're eating on like this outdoor lanai breakfast kind of deal, and there are all these giant buildings around us. And I go, isn't this awesome? She goes, kind of smells like pee. There's no uncleanness in this city, right? Look at this. No one who does shameful things or tells lies will enter the city. Now, here's the thing. Shameful things, I guess that's variable for depending on how you look at it. Maybe you could be in, maybe you could out on that. But lies, that's pretty clear. Anybody told any lies? Ever? Okay. Just two of you. The liars don't get in, and all of us have lied, and so I'm not sure how that's going to work. But there's no lying. There's no shameful things. There's no uncleanness in this city. Look at chapter 21, verse 4. Look at this. He will wipe away every tear. There's no sadness. There's no sorrow in this city. Look at this. There will be no more death. The very thing that haunts us all. Because here's the deal. The time's ticking. You're all on the clock right now. We're all going down. We're polishing brass in a sinking ship. This is it. Everybody's got to go at some point. We're all passing through. There's no death there. There's no sorrow there. There's no pain there. Look at this. Sadness, crying, or pain. The old ways are gone. That's here. That's now. The old ways go. It's pretty good. Jesus tells us we should desire the things that are there now, even though we're in the old ways right now. Or how about this? Chapter 22. Nothing that God judges guilty will be there. No sins will be there. The throne of God and the Lamb of God will be in the city. God is there. And listen to this. God's servants will worship him, and they will see him face to face. They will look upon his face. Now, that may not stick out to you. We'll come back to that at the end of this deal, but that's big. Like the last time, maybe for those that are in the room that don't know their Old Testament, the last time somebody saw any side of God, they glue like a nightstick, like a glow stick, like a Kim light. They went off. And so now everybody sees him face to face. You say, how's this possible? Like, what's that going to be like? How is this all possible? How do we get in if there's no sin there, there's no shameful things there, there's no lying there, there's no pain there? Because we all experience that now. How does that take place? Listen to how Paul explains it in chapter 15 of the book of 1 Corinthians. In a flash, he says, it's going to happen. In the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet, for the trumpet will sound, the dead will be raised, and look at that word, imperishable. No more death. They're raised imperishable, and we will be changed. You're going to be changed. In Christian theology, we call this the doctrine of glorification, meaning that there's a process that hasn't taken place that is still to come where God removes all that brokenness and sin from your life. It doesn't happen by your power. It happens by his power. By his grace, he takes that all out and prepares you for what's to come. Most of us go, when we think about that, we think, well, amen. Ready for that, right? So Jesus says this as our mission statement at what the church should be. He tells us to desire this and pray for this. Look at this language. On earth now as it is there. So we're supposed to desire purity now. We're supposed to desire that change now, even though we don't fully get it. We're supposed to desire that now. Ooh, that's a heart check, isn't it? Like, do you long for that? Do you want that? Listen to how Paul describes it as he gets very mathematical in his description of what this is all like. He says in chapter 6, do not let sin control the way you live. Don't let sin control the way you live, even though sin is present now, right? Do not give in to the sinful desires. Why? You're supposed to be desiring what it's going to be like when there is no sin. Do not let any part of your body become an instrument of evil and serve sin, even though we tend to have done that now, right? And then he says, instead, give yourselves completely to God, for you were dead, and now you have new life. So use your whole body as an instrument to do what is right for the glory of God, meaning that you're in a battle. The body, which is still shaped by brokenness, sin, and all these desires that we know don't lead to our true fulfillment in our soul's life. We still desire those things because we're shaped by the brokenness and the sinfulness of this world. He says, but don't give in to that. Desire the things that are beyond that, the life that is to come, what is going to be, and pray that it would come now. That's what he says. Paul explains it really plainly, very specifically when he says phrases like this in Ephesians chapter 4, get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, brawling, slander, along with every kind of malice. Just get rid of these things. Extinguish them. Be done with them. Desire something more out of your life than this stuff. In most of that list, we go, okay, I think I got it. Maybe I think I've got rage under control, most of us, unless you're driving on 192, but whatever. Brawling, slander, I beat nobody up at work. But anger? Some of those things it gets harder, right? As you look deeply. We've been trapped in our homes with our immediate families for a long time. Nobody can get angry? Good luck. He says, get rid of all these things. You're in a battle. You should long for the things that are to come and that they would be now. Do you really want those things now? In Christian theology, we call that the now, not yet. Meaning that we desire for the new body, the body without sin now, even though it's not yet. We know that we still are in a battle. We desire more. Maybe it helps to understand it this way. Look at this next one. One more. Body versus heart. In Christian theology, we recognize that Christ has given us, by faith, a new heart. But when we are glorified, we'll get a new body that matches the heart. But does your heart long for what the new body will experience? Are you with me? It's pretty deep, right? So back to the simple prayer Jesus says, pray this, on earth as it is in heaven. Pray that. Long for that. Do you long for that? As you tiptoe through the rest of chapter 6 of Matthew, where this prayer is found, he says some other things that are connected. I think most of the time we just pulled out the prayer and stop and pull it from its context. But I want to read to you some of these things because I think they're key insights. Look at verse 19. If you have your Bibles open, look at this. It says, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth. He says, where wrath and must. Dyslexic even in talking. Rust, and moths, and people can come in and steal, right? He says, store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Now, remember, this. He says we're supposed to be praying that heaven would come here. So store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. And then listen to this last phrase, right? For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So what you truly celebrate, rejoice, long for, are thankful for, want, prioritize, that's where your heart is. It's where your treasure is what you value. So when he says things like, look at this, next slide. When he says things like anger and hate and racism, bitterness, unforgiveness, all these things, mouths, they got to go. He's saying, if your heart is fixated on any one of these things, those things aren't going. So if your heart is there, your heart hasn't gone yet. Now, think about that, right? If you are holding on to these things in your heart, he says that's where your treasure is, meaning that if you are full of anger or unforgiveness or hate or racism, check this out, that isn't going. It's not going. And so if you're holding on to that and that isn't going, we have a problem. Because you say you want to go, but your heart is holding on to something that's not going. Why would you want to go if you treasure what's not there? It's an indictment. It's a review. It's like, hey, check it out. What's going on? Or this, he goes on in verse 21, he says, and this gets heavy, gets deep. Just stay with me for a moment. He says, your eyes are healthy. If your eyes are healthy. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. And if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. It's like, I'm a big NIV person, and I love the NIV. I read that's like what I grew up on. But here they talk about dropping the ball. This is a drop the ball moment. I'm going to read to you the King James Version because it's the Holy Version. Check this out. Here we go. If therefore thine eye be single. Look at that. All right? Go back to the NIV version. Check it out. If your eyes be healthy. If your eyes are healthy. Well, King James is a little different. Ready? Look at this. Therefore, if thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. Now, when I grew up, you read the passages like, if your eyes are taking in unhealthy things, your whole body is going to be a disaster, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's basically like a setup for like, you shouldn't be looking at porn, which I get it, right? And nobody should. And is that like a version of this that is true? Yes, okay. And I'm not trying to knock that. I'm saying, hey, probably a good idea. Try that out. But the King James points us to something that's deeper. Check this out. You used to have a single eye. And that word there in the evil eye, if you have this evil eyes, right, if you're checking out the evil stuff, it's really a multiplicity of evils. And so listen to what Jesus is actually saying. He's saying, if you're singularly focused on me, it leads to the health of your whole body. But if you're focused on what everybody says, or all the other rules, or the expectations, or the moral instructions, you'll do a bunch of weird things. You'll become either a hypocrite or you'll become completely unaware of your own brokenness. But when you focus on me, singularly focused on me, it's a different deal. And you say, well, what's the connecting here? Why is this connected to that whole heaven thing? Look again. Look at Revelation chapter 22. Look at this. Nothing that God judges guilty will be in that city. The throne of God and the Lamb will be in the city, and God's servants will worship him. And look at this. They will see his face. Trust me, if you see his face, you're not looking at anything else. You're focused, right? In heaven, there is a focus on the only one who truly matters. That's him. Jesus says, pray that would be your focus now, right? Now that you'd have a singular focus. So back to it, real simply, listen to this. On earth as it is in heaven. You're supposed to be praying that now would be like then, even though we know now can't be fully like then. And you say, well, why are you talking about this now? Look at this. I showed this to you last week, Revelation chapter 7. Then I looked, and there was a large crowd. That's what John sees. He says there were from every nation, every tribe, and every race, they were together. There was harmony because they were singularly focused. They were standing before the throne and they were shouting loudly in worship, and they were saying, victory belongs to God who sits on the throne and unto the Lamb. No divisions, no separations, nothing dividing them unto the Lamb. They were singular in their focus. You say, well, what does that mean? That means we should be praying that that would be now. And the church should be that now. Meaning that the church of Jesus Christ in this broken earth should be a place where people of all tribes, all races, all backgrounds, all socioeconomic backgrounds come together, and there is unity because we are focused on the only thing that matters and the only one that matters. Are you with me? Let me introduce you to James Stockdale. In Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, he makes reference to James Stockdale. And James Stockdale is an interesting character with such a cool history. If you want to just do a deep dive into Wikipedia, you should check it out. He invokes a concept called the Stockdale paradox that I want to kind of explore with you today just for a moment, because I think it's this paradox that all of us are dealing with. I think it's what Jesus is asking us to pray, and so I want to lay this case out for you. But I decided that I was going to try to explain this. And then I realized there was a great clip of Jim Collins explaining this, who is the author of the book. So I just want to let him explain it to you. But before he does that, I just want you to know that this is probably one of the most significant military men of our time, who spent years in a POW camp during Vietnam, who came out and led a branch of the military, who was part of the highest form of service in our country, and then ran for vice president. Pretty awesome guy. So check out this explanation.
I would like to give you a way of thinking that has been enormously helpful to me, that came from the Good to Great research for dealing with great difficulty. And it was what we came to call the Stockdale paradox. And the Stockdale paradox was taught to us by, when we were doing the Good to Great research, we're trying to make sense of the CEOs. And in doing that, I just by chance happened to get to know Admiral Jim Stockdale, who was the highest ranking military officer in the Hanoi Hilton, shot down in 1967, was there till 1974. They could pull him out at any time and torture him, and they did. They tortured over 20 times. And I had the privilege to get to know Admiral Stockdale. And we were going to the faculty club one day, and I had read his book, In Love and War, which was written in alternating chapters by himself and his wife about their years when he was in the camp. And I got depressed reading the book because it seemed so bleak, it seemed so difficult, it seemed, it's like we can all endure anything if we know it's going to come to an end and we know when. But what if you don't know if it's ever going to come to an end? And you certainly don't know when. So I asked Admiral Stockdale how he dealt with that, and he said, you have to realize I never got depressed because I never, ever wavered in my faith that not only I would get out, but I would turn being in the camp into the defining event of my life that in retrospect I would not trade. Later, when we were up the hill, I asked him, I said, Admiral Stockdale, who didn't make it out as strong as you? And he said, easy, it was the optimists. I said, the optimists? You sounded optimistic. He said, no, I was not optimistic. I never wavered in my faith that I would prevail in the end, but I was not optimistic. I said, what's the difference? Oh, the optimists always thought we'd be out by Christmas. Of course, Christmas would come and it would go. And then we were going to be out by Easter and Thanksgiving, and then Christmas would come again, and they died of a broken heart. And that's when Admiral Stockdale grabbed me by the shoulders and said, this is what I learned. When you're imprisoned by great calamity, by great difficulty, by great uncertainty, you have to, on the one hand, never confuse the need for unwavering faith that you will find a way to prevail in the end, with, on the other hand, the discipline to confront the most brutal facts we actually face. And we're not getting out of here by Christmas.
So the principles, or the paradox, is this. You're going to retain faith that will prevail in the end, regardless of difficulties. And you're going to confront the most brutal facts in your current reality. You don't gloss over it. You don't pretend it's not there. You don't not face it. You do, but you just know deep down that in the end, God will prevail. God's sovereignty will prevail. I love like the simple statement of this principle. Next slide, check it out. I never lost faith in the end of the story. And that's what Jesus is invoking in this prayer, and that's what he's asking us to believe. That's why he's asking us to live out our mission in this life. That you're going to face down the difficulties, your personal and cultural difficulties, and some of them will seem overwhelming. Some of that will seem really difficult. Think about just the spiritual component to that for a moment. You won't do it as if it's not there. You won't do it. You won't pretend. You won't gloss over it. You won't do it as a stoic. You will do it as a believer, knowing that God will bring about the redemption of our souls, that his sovereignty will win, that he promises us what will take place and what is to come, but we'll live desiring that to happen as we face down our difficulties. Stephen Covey in his book puts it simply this way. He says, start with the end in mind. That's what Jesus is asking you to do. Start with the end in mind. Would you have a vision of what is to come and live like that now? With the end in mind. You say, well, boil that down for me. What does that mean like today? How do I do that? Let's get very simple. Ready? You get two dynamics to this. There's the personal component, the individual component, and the cultural component. Take just the individual for a moment. You as an individual, start with the end in mind. Spiritually speaking, the end in mind for each of us is that we're going to be purified, sinless, without defect, with no sorrow, with no pain. But that's not now. We're going to face all of the difficulty of fighting through our own battles, our own addictions, our own sins, our own besetting sins, with a reality approach to how difficult that is, knowing that that will be ultimately, through his grace, made new. Or take it down even one more notch, like a real practical notch. Ready? So just the here and now, just in this space and time, if you were to apply this principle, it may be applied simply like this. What do you want people to say at your funeral? Like, what do you think they're going to say? Think it through. Like, I want so-and-so to stand up and say this, and whatever that this is, that's truly what your treasure is. And so ask yourself, and I know very few people. I've been to a lot of funerals. I've done a lot of funerals. I've been doing this a long time. I've been at no funerals where they stood up and they were like, he was so wealthy. I've done that, but a lot of us spend a lot of our time. That's our singular focus. Or he was so powerful. I hadn't heard that a lot either. You know what I hear? I hear a lot about relationships. I hear a lot about the way people treat each other. I hear a lot about the most important relationships of family and loved ones and the people we do life with and people we walk with and the way we treat people, the way we oversee people or encourage people or uplift people. That's what I hear a lot of talk about. And so here's the question, like, is that your treasure? Like, if you were to start with the end in mind, that would be, what do you really want them to celebrate? What do you really want them to celebrate at the end? Kick it up to the cultural for just a moment. We would be crazy to admit that we live in a time where it seems like the world is falling apart culturally. And it seems like the media loves it. So let me just say it this way. There's a time coming. Heaven involves none of that. It involves linking arms with people who are not like you, don't look like you, don't even share the same language as you, and worshiping the only one who matters face to face. Which means if we're going to pray that it be like there, like it is now, or like we're going to want what's there now, we're going to have to treat each other that way now. And if we can't treat each other that way now, we have to ask ourselves, where is your heart? If we want to, if we enjoy, if our minds are consumed with disrespecting or bigotry now, I think Jesus is saying, well, it's not going to be like that there. So do you really want to go? Are you with me? We got to want those things now. And you say, well, what can I practically do? What can we do in the here and now? Well, do this. Have conversations. Talk to. Interact with. Link arms with socially. With people that always look like you, think like you, talk like you. Be a good listener. Be respectful. Ask for clarification. Tell the truth. Don't shy away from the realities. But let it be filled with love and respect and honor and grace and kindness and mercy. And if it's not, and you don't like it that way, what's wrong with your heart? We're supposed to be praying that it be like there now. Are you with me? Let's pray. Father, we thank you for a chance to gather in your name and to take time to reflect upon your word. And I pray that this would become our motto, that it would be the backdrop and the driving passion behind how we treat others, what we do, how we live. Father, may it be on earth as it is in heaven. May that be coming true in our lives. Would you take just a moment and would you pull out the communion real quick? Your bread and your wine. Take out the bread for just a moment, and as you do, would you be reminded that it is Christ's body that was broken for you, that is the promise of a new body for you? It's the promise of a new body. It's the promise of glorification. It's the promise of what's to come. Would you remember the body broken for you? Would you meditate on the sacrifice made for you? And would you take this and eat as a reflection of worship, as a statement of worship? When you're ready, take it. You take the wine, which is in the words of Jesus, the new covenant in his blood. And I want you to remember this as we celebrate this collectively together. We can't link arms together, but we can sure do this together in unity as a symbol of being tied to the only thing and the only one that matters. As we sing this song, the new wine, remember, there's a new heart. Jesus says, I can't pour new wine into old wineskins, so he's given us a new heart to contain this new wine. And as you take this in, this is a symbol of that covenant, this new covenant where the focus is on Christ and grace. Not what you can do, but what he has done. As you reflect upon that, take this wine and give thanks. Join me in standing. I want to sing this with us together this morning as we close out our time of worship. As we lift this up, I just want you to remember, in the crushing, in the pressing, we live in a crushing time, a pressing time. It's pressing relationally, it's pressing culturally. It just is. I don't want to overstate it, but it just feels like that. But know that through that time, Jesus is still sovereign. God is still God. He's still in control, and heaven still awaits us. Would you set your mind on the things that are to come and live like that now? Let's lift this up. Ready?
In the crushing, in the pressing,
You are making new wine.
in the soul I now surrender. You are breaking new ground. So are you. Jesus, bring new wine out of me.
Some beauty in that. I just want you to take just a moment as we go back out into a world that's pressing, that is broken. I want you to say with every fiber of your being, make me new. Make me long for the things of heaven. Pour it into me, Lord, and may I live out your grace. One more time, let's just lift it up. Sing it out. Worship his name.
In the crushing,
In the
you are making new wine. In the soil, I now surrender. You are breaking new ground. You are breaking new ground. So make me a vessel. Make me an offering. Make me whatever you want me to be. God, I came here with nothing but all you have given me. Jesus, bring new wine out of me.
Love you. Mean it. Goodbye. God bless.